Good morning. It's Sunday, April 11th. Very special class we have today. Dr. Vesna Wallace is with us, and we are going to discuss karma. So if you have questions, use the Q&A function and ask them, because at some point we're going to be reading them and asking Dr. Wallace about them. But it would be best to keep them on point and keep them on, on the topic of karma. We'll do a brief meditation at the beginning. We won't do one at the end, so we can maximize our time with Dr. Wallace. And okay, let us set our intentions for today by saying the four Immeasurables prayer. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings not be separated from happiness that has never known suffering. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment, anger, and aversion. Okay. That's it for 7 minutes. We're doing a little bit shorter today, so we have more time with Dr. Wallace. All right, starting now. Okay, great. So before I bring Dr. Wallace on, please ask questions through the Q&A function on this Zoom. On the toolbar, you see Q&A, and you can ask questions about karma. Dr. Vesna Wallace is professor of religious studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara. She is a specialist in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism and a noted scholar of the Kalachakra Tantra and its cultures, who in recent years has been working closely with Buddhist and Buddhist materials from Mongolia. She is a noted scholar and teacher and author and a great, full disclosure, she's a really great friend and one of my favorite people ever. So please welcome Dr. Vesna Wallace.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Michael, for inviting me again. I know morning is here in California time, but you are all scattered around the world, so maybe good evening to some of you. Yeah, so Michael kindly invited me again to these wonderful events that and teachings that he holds regularly with all of you to speak about karma, because he noticed that you are all very interested in karma. And of course, it is one of the most intriguing concepts in Buddhist doctrine. So karma, in a broader sense of term, simply means an action. But in another context, in the context that you are interested in, which is a doctrinal concept, karma is a moral force of a volitional action. So if involuntarily you have done certain action, right, and let's say it's a negative action, the result will not be the same as one has done volitionally, right? And also whether action is completed or not completed, or the result of action will depend on that as well. But so let's talk. So it means motivation is the most important element there, because that's what defines really karma, this volitional action, because that volitional action sets in motion a series of events that produce corresponding results. But it is not to be understood in a very kind of mechanical way, in the same way as if I put a finger in a boiling water that it will burn right away. Karma doesn't always work like that. And because our karma, human karma, is very mixed. And whatever actions we have performed now or in a past, maybe past lifetime, this lifetime, or many, many million years ago, the results of that karma will mature only when causes and condition for that karma to come to maturation take place. So that's what's always a little bit kind of scary. Like one never knows when actually that karma will mature. So karma then is not to be understood also in a kind of a fatalistic, deterministic way either, right? Because because it can be eliminated. If one engages in, let's say, act of greed, in a moment, or steal something, right? One can change this by the same day or next day practicing generosity to counteract it. So just like a negative karma can be counteracted with positive karma and neutralized, in the same way also positive karma can later be destroyed by series of negative karmas. So that's how it plays. But karma can be physical, right? Which we do, what we do with our actions, can be verbal, whether it's abusive speech or very nurturing, supporting speech, right? Gentle speech, and can be also mental karma. This is these motivations that we have, or desires, that whether we desire somebody to be harmed or not. So all of that plays into this concept of karma. But Buddha said that the mental karma is most important, because from mental karma, all these other karmas come, right? From our mental state, from our mental karma will come our speech, whether it is kind or unkind speech. Same also with actions, whether it will be positive or morally positive or neutral actions. So karma then can be positive karma, virtuous karma. It can be negative karma or non-virtuous karma, and can be also neutral karma. Like when you are walking to your kitchen to get a glass of water. So morally, ethically, it's neither positive nor negative. In which case one is not accumulating any kind of karmic results, right, of that negative karma, or that karma, neutral karma, sorry. So, but what is the source of karma? Because karma plays an important place in that cycle of rebirth, right? So what happened to the Buddha? Buddha achieved enlightenment when he was 40 years old, and then he lived another 40 years, traveling around India, meeting different kind of people, engaging in physical action, verbal action, right? So was he still accumulating in karma? And so according to Buddhist scriptures, no. After enlightenment, even though Buddha was active in the world, he did not accumulate the kind of karma that would keep him in samsara. But how is it possible? Well, it is said that karma comes from that notion that we all carry, as samsaric being, of I am. So for as long as there is this sense of I, of individuation, we then very much identify ourselves with our actions. But most importantly, that I becomes an agent of action. So wherever is the sense of I, there is an agent of action. And wherever there is an agent of action, there is one who then experiences results or maturation of those actions. If through Buddhist practice, right, one eliminates the sense of I, then there are no karma, because there is no agent of karma, nor is there experiencer of karma. But now, again, how is that possible? It's possible because all mental afflictions arise from the sense of I. And the sense of I arises from ignorance, right? Ignorance, that spiritual ignorance that keeps us in samsara, that ignorance that leads us to identify ourselves with our body, with our feelings, with our political view, religious views, right? And so family, this is my family, my body, don't you dare to touch it, it's my feeling, you are hurting my feeling, how dare you, right? So we identify with all of that, with that which is not I as I. And from that arise mental afflictions. And when we act out of mental afflictions, whether physically, mentally is already karma, right? That mental affliction in a way. Or verbally, everything comes negative. Nothing comes when you are positive when you are angry. When we are angry, we are impulsive, right? Or impatient, or jealous, or greedy, or maliciousness arises. All of this will give negative karma. And from that negative karma will arise then actions, so experiences of those actions. So if I eat a very spicy food right now, it is I who will be experiencing hotness in my throat and mouth, right? Not you while you're watching me to eat a spicy food, right? And it's because of that sense of I. So Buddha, then it says, was free of that sense of I. When one is free of sense of I, then one is not sense-centered anymore. That all one's actions are positive actions. They're directed to the rest of the world. There is nothing to defend here. Oh, I have to guard myself from this, from that. I have to defend myself, right? Now all of that disappears. So then karma sets into motion a series of effects, because from all negative karmas comes suffering. And then while we are experiencing suffering, we are kind of habituated through numerous lifetimes to react to suffering in a negative ways. Why me, or whatever else comes. Anger can come, all kinds of negative emotions come, out of which then again negative karma issues. And so that cycle, according to Buddhism, always perpetuates itself. So, which means then all ordinary beings, all beings who are not enlightened yet, are subject to karma. Be it animal, a human being, a ghost, denizens of hell, God, God not in a capital G, because Michael probably already spoke to you about the 6 realms of samsara, right? Gods are just previous sentient beings who just got some good karma, ended up there, but they are there for as long as that positive karma that gave that result of being born as a hell is exhausted. One is exhausted, who knows? Maybe they'll fall in a hell because now some negative karma has to be experienced. So there is no guarantee, never, where one will actually be reborn, because we've been here since beginningless time and accumulating and eliminating good and bad karmas continually. So every then sentient being has performed various types of karma since beginningless time. And it is says that those born in a human realm have a mixed karma. That's why we're experiencing very pleasant things, and we also can experience tremendous suffering. Karma also can be individual, right? Just as I said, if I eat salty food, I experience thirst, not you watching me eating salty food. But then there is a collective karma. Collective karma can be of a small group of people or a larger group of people, or can be global karma, like we are all now experiencing with COVID, right? That would be called the global karma, that we have all contributed to it. So then in Buddhism, really what we experience is as individuals or a group of people, we are experiencing results of our karma. So there is no one really to point finger to and blame them and say, this is your fault, right? But rather it is our collective fault or just my fault. That's why the doctrine of karma explains why also bad things can happen to good people. Somebody who's been virtuous most of life and then sometimes subject to tremendous suffering, right? Because it's something there from previous karma that now had to be experienced. And Buddhists, usually think when they do something that's negative and then they're experiencing karma result of that karma right away, they say, oh, good. Now I have dealt with that karmic debt and I don't need to worry again, right? Like if you have lied and then you're caught in lie and you're kind of embarrassed publicly, right? In a way, it's good because you don't have to deal with that later. So, but if we engage in certain types of karma, whether positive or negative, continuously, right, then this becomes our habitual propensity. These karmic seeds stay in the consciousness. And so then when we transmigrate, right, consciousness transmigrates into another rebirth, carries these karmic propensities. And that's where, and then, which means we are as babies already born with those propensities. And then they will play out later in life, which is not that great. But there is another important thing when we talk about karma, and that is that through karma, all sentient beings are interconnected. The fact that you have all signed for Michael's course and that you are now together meeting regularly, you are creating a karmic connection, right? And that you already have some karmic connection from who knows when, from 100,000 years ago or sooner, we don't know, right? So that we are all karmically connected. We have been each other's friends and spouses and enemies and teachers and students and every brothers and sisters. We've been everything to each other's at some point of life in this samsara. And therefore, it is because of this interconnectedness also through karma that in Buddhism they can say that one can look and should look upon all sentient beings as one's own mother. Because sometime in one lifetime, it's long, long ago, we've been each other's fathers and mothers and children and cared for each other. So then therefore it says that one's liberation from this cycle of rebirth depends on the kindness and presence of others. So one can eliminate that negative karma that has been accumulated since beginningless time through treating others as one's own mothers. So let's go back to volition or intention behind the karma. So as I said, volition or motivation is a determining factor of the moral quality of action. But what about if I perform good actions with bad motivation? So that person, let's say I have engaged in actions towards somebody because I actually had a bad intention, but actually they benefited from that good action, right? Even though my motivation was bad. Well, for me, it is still a negative karma because my motivation wasn't really to benefit a certain person or a group of people, but rather something else. Motivation was bad. What about unskillful actions with good motivation, where motivation is good, but somehow due to my ignorance, lack of experience, I harmed somebody, right? What's that then? Well, motivation was right. So you've done your best. It's not as, still, karmic result is not as positive as it would be if one has skill or knowledge how to help, right? Nevertheless, it's not negative karma in the sense that one will be experiencing some really negative consequences. Same applies with karma that is completed or non-completed. If I engage in plan to engage in certain action or start it, but then for whatever reason it's not completed, result will not be the same as if I actually completed that action. So for karma to be fully able to mature in the future in its result has to be completed. So if I have planned something negative, right, and then later it was not possible to do this action, or I changed my mind for whatever reason, not necessarily regret. So then what we do, how, apart from counteracting negative action, when we realize, okay, this was not a virtuous action or a virtuous speech, then we can counteract it, right, with something positive to balance it, to eliminate it, or we can practice remorse, regret, not like going around for the rest of life with guilt, but recognize that this is a negative karma, kind of confess it to oneself, to the Buddhas, if you like, and then make a determination not to engage in that karma anymore. But how this energy, this force works, that once we have engaged in action, that somehow these effects or this power continues without our knowledge. How that works, it says we can't understand it until we are the Buddhas. So now I already talk about positive, negative, and neutral karma, but let's talk about other types of karma in terms of their function. So we have a propulsive karma. It is a karma that will determine one's birth, basically form of life or species. What I'm going to be born in the next life. Am I going to be born as a human being? Is my karma, or whether some other karma that I have performed in some previous lives and I am not aware of it, will come to maturation because the causes and conditions will arise and I'll be born as an animal, dog, or luckily dog rather than snake, right? Or animal that kills other animals. Because according to Buddhism, once you fall in an animal realm, in a particular species of certain animal, it's really hard to get out of there. Let's say if you are an animal that feeds by killing other animals, you are continuing to accumulate negative karma. So it's not like, oh, I'm animal and this is an animal and so it's fine. It's not responsible because those habitual propensities of killing are there, right? And that may lead to hell or to lower animal rebirths and so on. So that there are certain karmas that will determine which kind of lifetime, life force or life shape I will have. But they say the most important moment, decisive moment, is really the moment of death. So if you die in a moment of hatred, well, somebody gets so hateful and so angry and then gets a heart attack from all that emotion, then that last moment is decisive where consciousness will go, because then consciousness will go directly either to hell or to some kind of low rebirth, or if one dies in a moment of greed, may go and be born as a hungry ghost. That very moment of death, of last mental state in which one dies, is very important. And then there is a so-called accomplishing karma. And accomplishing karma are types of actions that we engage, which will determine the circumstances of one's life. Gender, whether I'm born male or female, health with which we kind of inherit genetical diseases. According to Buddhism, are karmic diseases, or the illnesses that for which there is a cure, and yet no matter how much medicine you take, you cannot get well. That would be called the karmic disease. Talents that we have, whether musical, artistic, or other talents, mental states, experiences, region in which we are born, social conditions. Are we born at the time of war in a terrible conditions, and so on? This is determined by accomplishing karma. And so that's why in Buddhism it's really important. It is important not only to generate as much as positive karma in one's lifetime, but also and cultivate positive mental states. But it's also important to how to say it, to know that when one dies, right, consciousness can easily get confused, simply because nobody likes to die. We all get afraid of death. Most people get very afraid of dying, experience fear, anxiety, grief, because of separation from the loved ones. And then that unhappy consciousness that leaves the body at the time of death is kind of confused consciousness, right? And then that kind of consciousness has no ability to clearly think in that intermediate period between the death and rebirth, to look around and say, oh, where do I want to be born? Where is a good family? The family, where is a country? Because this consciousness is free, unbounded by body, can go anywhere, can see everything. So, oh, maybe I should go and born in that country. It's very peaceful, and people are maybe gentle there, and I'll find a nice family, right? But it's rarely how it's experienced. This is really something that very advanced spiritual practitioners can do. They can choose mother and father. If you have children, and sometimes teenagers, when they are angry, says, oh, I hate you, I wish you are not my mom or dad, right? They would say something, or maybe you have even said something like that in a moment when you didn't get what you wanted. But you chose them. Nobody chose them for you. You had some kind of karmic connection with them. And that karmic connection doesn't mean that necessarily you were each other's immediately preceding life family members, but you are karmically drawn to them. So you kind of, I say chose, but not necessarily chose. It's your karma that threw you there. And this is where kind of fear or anxiety comes among Buddhists, even, when they talk and think about karma on a daily basis, like how karma can just throw you, like a leaf in the ocean. Those waves can just toss you wherever it like, right? So like you almost like don't have a control over it. That's why there are a series of Buddhist practices that are designed so that when one dies, peacefully, as much conscious as possible, and then use that intermediate period to choose, kind of a rebirth and so on. So this karma then propels us without our control of the time, right? And decides which gender, whether family, all of this is determined by particular types of karmas. But so what is at play are these mental and karmic residues, right, from last life and previous life, that you have seen sometime maybe on television. They show these people who are transforming already themselves into cats and animals. The guy who is implanting this cat mustache hairs, right, and it's filing his teeth. I mean, he's obviously already preparing his rebirth. He already is showing this inclination to be a cat, right, in this life. He already has this karmic connection. So he will most likely be born as that cat, as the cat that he is already, they make already these tattoos on the face of a cat and so on. But one could say it also comes from a previous lifetimes that he, maybe not in this long distance in his past rebirths, that he was already a cat and then now wants to go back to that rebirth. Or when you have strange dreams and you are dreaming things you never seen in your life before, and you experience and you wonder, where in the world did it come from? Why did I dream it? I never see it in any movies. I never read it in any book. So it's not like some imprints, from something you were reading or watching, and you wonder where it came from. So then they would say, well, it comes something from previous lifetimes. So what we dream in a later part of a night, like before we get up, they said this could be oftentimes dreams from something playing out from our previous lifetimes, because the consciousness in a deep sleep is very subtle. When it goes beyond that dreamless sleep, when you go back into the dream, then oftentimes what we dream, they say, are the things imprints from a previous lives. Whereas these early dreams we have when we fall asleep, oftentimes simply imprints from the day, right? From conversations you had or something you saw, read, or experienced. And all of those, if you play chess or a card late at night, sometimes you still dream combinations in your dream, right? Because it's still that experience there, or you have you continue conversations you had during day. So I'm watching the time because also I want to be able to respond to some of the questions you have. So just going back for a moment to the Buddha, because Buddha achieved enlightenment, as I said, he engaged, didn't accumulate any karma. And yet when his jealous cousin rolled the boulder off the hill with intention to kill the Buddha, he was able to injure Buddha's leg, basically broke a Buddha's leg or did some kind of injury to it. But Buddha also had a backache. How can enlightened beings still have a backache, right? And he suffered from constipation. And he would get a headache from that constipation. We read it in early Buddhist scriptures, right? So how come? We thought, I know I thought when I just began to study Buddhism that Buddhas don't experience anything anymore. But it was said that there are two types of nirvana. Nirvana with remainder means nirvana where I'm achieving enlightenment while still in this body, why I still have this body if I achieve enlightenment? Because physical karma, some physical karma has not yet been fully experienced, fully eliminated, and it can be only eliminated by experiencing it. So the fact that that this cousin of Buddha was able to hurt him is because many years, I don't know how many lifetimes ago, maybe 900,000 years ago, they say Buddha was a prince and he killed two of his brothers in order to get to the throne, to inherit the throne, right? So which means that even Buddhas have been in a previous life engaging in negative karma before, right? Launching on a path towards Buddhahood. And so while still alive, Buddha had to experience and burn out that karma, right? And then when he died, then he entered parinirvana, in which he no longer will take any physical form or shape, but we never experience even the physical karma. And that is called nirvana without remainder, because there, nothing has left, right? But then what about, now, just for a second, let me go back to the Buddha. So Buddha experiences these negative karmas in this life while still a Buddha, right? But the fact that Buddha and all the other Buddhas, according to Buddhism, those who are not historical Buddhas, so even the historical Buddhas and those who are not historical Buddhas, that they have all passed through samsara. They have all at some point engaged in negative actions. They have been mosquitoes and snakes and ghosts and beings in hell. They went through all of that, and yet through practice, they were able to achieve complete freedom from samsara, right? And purify themselves completely through dharmic practices, which tells us then that all of us have a hope, that one should never lose a hope, because if you, let's say, you go into this, you kind of start this path of self cultivation, purification, gaining a positive karma, developing yourself in terms of wisdom, compassion, skillful means, virtuous actions. And then you kind of blow up, do something really stupid, and say, gosh, will I ever? Is there a chance for me? Or am I hopeless here? Why I'm still doing this, right? It's just all habit or something. But looking at what Buddhas have done and knowing that Buddhas have went through all of this, that they've been mosquitoes and fruit flies at some point, it says in the scriptures. And yet they were able to rise to Buddhahood eventually. So it's nobody's hopeless. Even the worst kind of people you can imagine, think of Hitler or Stalin, who killed 20 million of his own people. Think of horrible people who have done just unimaginable things to other people. You would think, no, they're doomed forever. There is not such an idea of doomed forever in Buddhism, right? You're born as a god because karma brought you there, but then you'll fall back into another rebirth. Same with those who are born in hell. Some will be there born for 5 minutes, 2 seconds, and somebody maybe for millions of years. But also there must be something there also that in some incalculable eon, they have also did something positive, and that will, when that terrible karma that they have done has been exhausted through those sufferings that they experience in hell, they will be reborn maybe as human or God, who knows? So there is a chance, right, for everyone to achieve enlightenment, disregarding what kind of life forms they have taken. Your little pet, you may have at home, cat or a doggy or a parakeet, whatever you have, one day maybe will become a Buddha. So, which means also, just as we are to engage with others as if they were our parents who long ago took care of us when we were baby, so we can also approach others as potential Buddhas, because Buddhas were all of that, right? So I see we have a kind of coming closer, and maybe I haven't touched yet anything because I'm still a little bit sleepy, but that's why we can maybe open to question and answer. And Michael, you can start first, even
Sure.
if you want, and because then we can, maybe something that didn't cross at the moment my mind, but we can talk about it.
Well, first of all, thank you, and that was very, very illuminating, what you said. And I think there's a lot of questions, and there's there's a few repetitive themes in the question, so I'll just kind of speak to that and and ask you about that. So what's the best, for people who are really asking very practically, what's the best thing to do moving forward now? Okay, now we're in this body, we're meditating, we're hearing the teachings, we're hearing about karma from you. What do we do now from here? What's the best plan of action?
Yeah, well, very good question. I mean, you have already doing everything right, it seems, by developing knowledge and understanding of basic ethical principles, uh, through which you're accumulating karma. You're already meditating, which means you're already developing, cultivating, transforming your mind through meditation, right? And you are studying with Michael, which means you are already gaining knowledge that can lead you to liberation. So something that His Holiness Dalai Lama oftentimes says, he says, when you start your morning, before you do anything, set up your motivation. May your motivation be wholesome one, virtuous one. Like, may I be benefit to any, let me be benefit to somebody today, at least one person, right? Or it can be much higher motivation, like a motivation of a bodhisattva. May I be benefit of all sentient beings for as long as there are sentient beings and for as long as there is samsara, right? And that motivation is already doing something. It's hard for us to understand when you eat something, eat a food, right? And you are not consciously following the whole process of the digestion and which vitamins are going into blood cells, right? And what is going into the waste, and all this biological process, it's happening without our knowledge. We have had the nutritious food and then body is doing its own thing. Well, something similar is with the mind. You put something positive and you don't think maybe about it, but it's doing something. You have planted a seed, and that seed will be removing some negative seeds, and it takes time. Buddha just said in the Pali Suttas about it, how it also works for meditation, mental cultivation, because after all, karma comes primarily from the mind, and then it's expressed, right, through words and actions. He said it's like when somebody is cultivating mind, and you don't see it right away, right? Even though you're making progress, you kind of don't necessarily see it. He said like a woodcutter who has an axe with a wooden handle, and he's been a woodcutter all his life. And then when you look at his handle, you will see kind of imprints of a woodcutter's fingers. So those imprints are there after a long time, and then you can see, wow, he was holding this handle all his life. So it's with mind, Buddha said, as mental cultivation. See, we are making these imprints, and you are replacing negative karmic imprints and negative karmic seeds with positive ones. But so positive karma can lead you to wonderful human rebirths, well, you will have all wonderful experiences, or you can be born as a god. But if you are not then utilizing this life for good things, right, then and not developing wisdom, then again you may be thrown back. That's why it says it's better to be born as a human, because as a human you're experiencing pleasure and suffering. Then you understand suffering, and then you want to get out of it. But when you're born as a god, it's so nice there. You're just enjoying, in good health, and you're always useful, and everything comes to you spontaneously. You desire something and it just happens, but you're not developing any further virtue. You're not doing anything with that. So you're just wasting. You're exhausting that karma, and you're not desirous to engage in spiritual practice because everything is hunky-dory, and you are not and you forget about death and illness and old age. You're not experiencing it, right? But as a humans, we do experience all of that. And so that's why they say that human life is so precious, because here is the best way to achieve enlightenment. When you're born as an animal, it's really, really hard because you don't think in the same ways. You can't cultivate yourself as a human being, or in a hell, you just try to survive that suffering, right? You suffer and then you are killed, and then you are second you are born again and suffer and are killed, and like this, right? So it's too consuming suffering to be able to start think about dharma and think about practice. So that's why this human life is so precious. And so, to answer again quickly, start with good motivation and see what you can do that day. Have you heard about Tara, the female bodhisattva Tara? It is said in the legends that she was a nun, mhm, like she was just a woman. I don't know, maybe nun, maybe not, maybe lay woman. But one of her previous lives, and she made a vow that she will not eat until she's done something good for somebody, and then that she has always kept that vow, and therefore she became this wonderful female bodhisattva of compassion.
Wow.
So then, as I'm sure you have already, Michael has addressed this, that's why you have a compassion and you have a wisdom. Wisdom tells you skillful means. When you want to engage in good actions, right? You need to have then some kind of wisdom to know how to help others, how to do so that your good motivation ends with a good result, and not good motivation with unskillful means and bad result.
Well, I think we have to say goodbye because it's almost.
Oh, sorry. So I'm sorry
No,
if I
no,
didn't
there's no
answer
sorry.
any
Perfect.
other questions
We could do that in the future, but
some
it's
other time.
perfect. No, I want to thank you very much for being here today. It's your
Thank you.
generosity is
No,
and
thank you for
knowledge.
inviting me. That's always pleasure to talk about Dharma and to see you, Michael, now that you are on another side of a continent. I don't get to see you often.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We really appreciate it, and I hope to see you soon, Vesna. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. So we will. Dr. Wallace has to exit, but we will dedicate today's. Um, a couple of things she spoke to that we haven't got into in this class: the six realms of beings, which she's talking about, the God realms and the hell realms. God, like she said, not meaning God, creator God with a capital G, but they're realms of beings that exist because of good karma in this kind of. It's almost like the land of billionaires, where they have every luxury and every comfort and safety and things and but yet things are so good that they're not motivated to address the suffering of beings and the suffering, and because they're not really suffering, so often that good karma gets exhausted without setting themselves on the path of dharma and towards enlightenment, things like that. And all of the six realms of beings all have kind of analogous realms in the human realm. Think of like a billionaire, in terms of the God realms. Think of someone who's born into unbearable sufferings or experiencing, incarceration or torture and war and things that the Holocaust, or things that are living hells on earth. Um, but there are six realms of beings that exist kind of on different planes of existence. That's a good topic, and we're going to address that in the near future, either through this class or bringing on a guest to do that, because I think it's important. But I try to look at those things. The hungry ghost realm is another. They're beings that have very small mouths and thin necks, but huge stomachs with great appetites that can never be satisfied, like that, which is very much parallel to like addiction. And all those realms have their kind of counterparts in the human realms that we could go through. So we can understand how, if you don't fully understand or accept that these realms exist, you can look towards the human realm and see all these different levels of existence just by being human, and how karma um, moves us in and out of them. I think that was a wonderful class, and I'm really grateful for Dr. Wallace for being so generous with her time and her knowledge. So I'm glad many of you got to attend today. We will be here next week, Sunday at 10 Eastern, back to 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. We're working on a really good guest coming in May, and I will announce that as soon as it's confirmed and official. With that in mind, let's dedicate the merit of today's class to the benefit of all beings. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. See you next week.